First off, my name is Laura Foster. I think most of you know that. And for some of you that don't, I go by Dr. Laura Foster, and I also go by Soul Inspired Girl. And I love social for what it provides. And for me, it's been the opportunity to be able to connect with a lot of people, frankly, all over the world. So you may know me as Soul Inspired Girl. Regardless, it doesn't matter. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a conversation that I feel is really important right now. So it's top of mind and top of heart for me. And hold on just a second. So 5 steps to live your most authentic life. And we're going to talk about how you go from living a life for others to finding your voice and your values and your truth and a life that feels authentically you. So we're going to be diving into everything from truth to boundaries to values and so on. And tonight, as we get going, let me go ahead and just tell you a little bit about myself. So me, as I said, Dr. Laura Foster, and I have done many, many things in this lifetime. I am currently a transformational coach. I have been coaching full-time for the last 2 years, and I currently live in Kelowna, BC, and this is part of me living my most authentic life. I live a mom life. I have 2 adult boys who are 18 and almost 20, and my partner and I have a blended family of 6. So there's, nothing going on over here, no busyness, no craziness, nothing like that. And prior to being a coach, I was a full-time chiropractor with a clinic and a team and all of that great stuff in Ontario for just shy of 25 years. Please don't do the math. I can't even believe that 25 years came and went. It was a dream job. So I have since retired my license, and that's a whole nother topic in itself. But while I was practicing along those years, I coached other chiropractors and I led lots of workshops and retreats on health and well-being for over 2 decades. So some of you may have been here even from the 40-day detox program that I did. And I'm sure there's, you're quite happy that that's not what we're talking about tonight. Or maybe you've even been in one of my more recent programs called Reclaim Your Voice. Either way, it is really, really nice to see you here again tonight and meet all the new faces. And I am also a yoga instructor, and I lead amazing retreats, back when you could lead retreats all over the world with amazing women doing incredible things. So most recently, though, my whole entire universe has changed. So going from Ontario all the way back to BC has really, really redirected my energy. And so tonight I will be talking a lot about my signature program and the sisterhood called Roots, which I'll touch on at the end of today's masterclass. So I encourage you to stay to the end. I'm going to do my very best to really honor your time and not go over. So towards the end of the masterclass today, I not only will be getting into Roots and telling you about it, opening the cart for registration, but I'll also be sharing what I think is a really great resource. And we'll be putting that in the link at the end of the class. So I have 2 asks for you, and these are them. Number 1 is, I just invite you to be what I would call a nowist. And a nowist is someone who is, well, in this case, a woman who decides that she's just going to roll onto the pads of her toes. So instead of being back on the balls of your feet or in the heels, rather, you just roll forward onto the balls of your feet. And I find that, transformation can happen like that. Really, it can. We can hear something, we can connect with something that really changes our outlook and provokes us and leads us forward in a way it never did before. And that happens much more easily when you're engaged. So I know we're in this setting. I'm not sitting in front of you, so to speak. You're not in my living room. I'm not in a presentation room, but I can feel your energy and you can feel mine. So how wonderful for me if you decide that you want to be a nowist and you are rocking onto the balls of your feet. Number 2 is that chat bar that you saw there. I love it when you use it. Give me a thumbs up. Tell me what you think. Ask a question, all that stuff. So if that sounds good, go into your chat bar and just let me know. I love it. Thank you, Amanda. Don't you just love it when she's the first person? Sounds awesome. Okay, so let's start here. So here we are in this moment. And my question is, how do you know if you are in the right place? So you're in the right place for this masterclass simply because you're here. And I know that because the universe is always conspiring for us. And if you are here, it's meant to be, right? You're meant to be here. And I also know that time is not linear. So if you're catching this in replay, I know it's just as important for you to hear all the messages that you hear today. So thank you for being here live. I think it's really easy to engage when you're live, but I also just want to say thank you so much if you're the person who is catching this on replay and you are feeling like you are part of the process as much. So to break this down, you know that you're in the right place for several reasons. And this is how it looks for me. Number one, you're in the right place if you resonate with really direct conversation. So several years ago, I made a commitment to myself to do whatever I can in my life to be spending my time having what I would call the best conversation. Now, if you have been a part of my ongoing workshops at all through 2020, you know that there is something that I call the conversation that we're always having. And then there's the conversation that's right below the surface. It's the conversation that we could be having. And I do my very best all the time to speak as much as I can from my heart with the most direct conversation that I can. So this is me trying to have the best conversation that I can at all times. And if this is something that resonates with you, you are most definitely in the right place. Number two, you know you're in the right place if you appreciate a female-centered approach. Now, don't be grossed out by this, but this is what it feels like to me in the world. It feels so much like we're being kind of treated like little men in female skin sacks. I know that's kind of a gross sort of pictorial, but why I say that is because as women, we are this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful range of emotions. And we have this deep-seated intuition, and we have this ability to tap into what's not being said. Or, you know, it's kind of like, again, it's the message between the words or the thing that's not being said. Women can tap into that. It's very much our superpower. But life, as most of us know it, is much more patriarchal in its design. And I feel like it really fails to celebrate, you know, these innate superpowers of being a woman. And as somebody who's in her 5th decade, and it's changed, but it's not completely changed. I grew up with primarily male role models and the values and the approaches that they deemed fit. And I spent years adapting to this and trying those on for myself. And then I spent many, many years really undoing this. And now my teachings are very much female-centered, and they're intentionally designed for women. And if you think that this is important, I agree with you. It's subtle, but I believe it's really powerful. Next thing, you are also in the right place if you are ready to acknowledge this wisdom that I talked about and own the truth of it. So even if you don't feel ready, and I say that because sometimes when I'm speaking with women, they're kind of not sure if they know what I'm talking about. So this is the thing about a gift or a superpower, is it's natural. It's just something that's with us all the time, and we don't even really have to overly try. We can develop it, but it's innately ours. So something that I feel really strongly about is not just understanding that we have that innate superpower, but really digging into this idea that we can not just acknowledge it, but own it. So if you feel like this is something that resonates with you, you are most definitely in the right place. And third, but not last, or maybe that's even fourth, you resist being comfortable. Now, I say that because I feel like there's lots of mixed messages around being uncomfortable rather. So this is exactly what you need, I believe, this masterclass. If you know that chronically resisting, you're that person who chronically resists being uncomfortable. And I know that we often hear that growth is uncomfortable or even change is painful. But what if we challenge that perspective? What if we looked at what's uncomfortable as what it really is? To me, it's uncomfortable to live the life that isn't meant for you. That by definition is uncomfortable. I believe it's uncomfortable to show up in ways that are incongruent with who we are or our heart. And what about, you know, living a life on somebody else's values? That's uncomfortable. And what about the discomfort of dishonoring who you are, your own truth, or being someone you're not? I know that. That's my definition uncomfortable. And that's what I like to discuss. As we go through today's masterclass, I will be defining a lot. Because when we start from a place of knowing what we're talking about, we can make better strides. So that's the first one. If you resist being uncomfortable, I'm so glad you're here. I think that there are some really key takeaways that you'll find today that will be super important for you. So what are we doing here? We're going to do three main things in the masterclass. Number one is I'm going to, do the 5 key foundational steps that I believe will help move you towards the life that you're meant to live. Now, this is an hour masterclass, but it's that thing that we talked about as a nowist. When you kind of roll forward onto the balls of your feet and you engage and you listen and you feel for the thing that feels tangibly for you, that's when I believe we can that's when I really think that we can start to hold on and gather the information that we need to. So today I'm going to talk about the things that I think are really important. Number 2 is I'm going to give you as many empowering strategies as I can to help you connect to your voice and your truth and your deep sense of self. And also I'm going to have the conversation around deepening your intuition and, that inner guidance system that we all have. Okay. So let me see here. Here's what I know. I think foundational premises are really important. So here is what I've learned. When you get the relationship to yourself right, so many other aspects of your life start to take care of itself. Now, how do I know this? This one gets to the heart of it for me because I've lived the life where I skimmed over my relationship to myself to commit to building relationships with other people and in other parts of my life. And let me show you what I mean by that. All right, so if you were to imagine, now I'm going to tell you a story about me, but it's much more interesting if I talk about it as if it's you. So I'm going to relate it to you. So if you look at the corner of the crosshairs, you'll see this blue dot right here. So this is your authentic self. And this is the part that represents your true self. In other words, your authentic self, who you are really at the core of your being. And when we're in the place of being who we are in this place, this is because it's our authentic self, it's our soul self. And this is the place where we feel ease and we feel natural and we feel flow and we feel effortless. When we do life from this place where we're in our authentic self, you can almost call this your zone of genius. Why? Because it's that soul self. Now the X's represent something else. The X's represent all the different ways that you can show up in the world. So in a perfect world, you would show up as your authentic self. But most of us don't do that in every experience that we have. So one X could be the you that shows up in the work that you do, right, at your job. Another X could be your intimate relationship. And perhaps another X could be when you're with your best friend or with your parents or extended family. So there are these many X's that exist. And let me just show you from here. So this could be, can you see that? Just Amanda, yes, you can. Okay. So the X over here, this could be how you show up in your job. And this X over here could be the you that you bring to your intimate relationship. And maybe when you're this person over here, the person that you're being in your life is the one who is the relationship with your best friend. Does that make sense, first of all? Perfect. So here's the difference. Now, I want you to look more at the X with the arrow. So the arrow signifies the gap between your true self and the person that you are being. For example, if this is your work, it's the mask that separates you between who you truly are and who you're being. And the longer the arrow is, the more veiled you are in this part of your life. And the bar is the separation. So this is the place where we chronically leak our energy. This is where stress and fatigue and burnout and so on are. And the more you function outside of your most authentic self is the more that you dishonor who you are and the you that you're meant to bring to the world. So this was my experience. And perhaps it's not a big deal when it's only a small gap, or the veiling that happens only happens in a couple areas of your life. But the degree to which this exists is the degree to which your actions and your behaviors are incongruent with who you truly are. So as you can imagine, we want to minimize that gap. We want to pull all those arrows in so that who you are being in all parts of your life is very representative of who you are. And that's what we call congruency. So that's when you build resiliency. This is when you start to build up your reserves and you stop leaking energy. And I know this because I know what this feels like for me, because this was once me. So here I am. I love this picture, grainy and all. I know what it's like to live a life based on someone else's playbook. This has been me. So this is a picture from me 10 years ago. And I took a trip to India with my best friend. It was awesome. And in this moment, take a good look, I'm literally sitting my ass on a cow dung couch. That's made out of cow dung. And that dog that was there is my little gentle friend who followed me around for nearly the month that I was there. And her name is Surrender. I'm not surprised by that. And truthfully, in that moment, life could not have been sweeter. I remember that. I remember how it felt to sit on there. But little did I know that this trip was going to be the thread that I pulled on that was going to shift my whole world. I did not know that what was coming was going to feel hard and sad and kind of full of angst. But I also didn't know that what was coming up was also going to be what I dreamed of, right? And what I so deeply desired. After this trip ended, I let every single ball in my life fall. And I didn't do it on purpose. I really had no choice. And from this place of just letting everything fall, and maybe you understand this to some degree, I allowed myself to see the truth of my life. And I don't want to be dramatic. Many areas of my life felt amazing. There were areas in my life where that X that we're talking about sat right on top of my authentic self. My job, the work I did in the world, that's one of those X's. Felt amazing. True representation of where I was. I felt invigorated to be there. Why? Because I did not have to wear a mask. I did not have to pretend I was someone I wasn't, and it felt amazing. Other relationships in my life felt the same. But for the areas that weren't aligned with who I was, there was really no amount of suppressing or busying or pretending, or all the energy that I put into other parts of my life wasn't helping the parts of my life that wasn't working. So I let myself essentially break it down. And that period, and I know some of you know this story, from breakdown to breakthrough was so much of what I talk about in coaching, in programs, and so on. Not in relationship to me, but in relationship to, really deciding what it is that you want, finding the ways to connect to who you are, deepening your relationship to yourself, and the part where you stop skipping over all the things that we need to know about who we are in order to go out in the world and create the world that we're meant to live. So here's the thing. I'm not going to pretend that it was easy. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. And I know beyond a shadow of doubt that I would take that journey 1,000 times over if it meant that I could get to this place that feels juicy and very deliciously authentic for me. Not perfect, but authentic. So when I speak about authenticity, I'm speaking about the ongoing practice. Authenticity is not something you do once. It's the ongoing practice, and it's the choice every single day to show up to the best of your ability or to the best of my ability. And when, I put my head down at night, I very much ask myself whether I felt like I was true to me. And that's what's going. So when we talk about living an authentic life, and I talk about you living an authentic life, it begins really with the idea of understanding what authenticity is. And when I begin a relationship with a woman in coaching, invariably I'll ask them, what do you want for your life? Seems like a typical question. What are you seeking? What are you desiring by this coaching relationship? What do you want that you don't have right now? And almost always, the person I'm working with will start to name things. She'll say things like, I want to be successful, and I want to be happy, and I want to feel fulfilled, which are great answers because I get that. But, I want that too. So it's great, but we want to be successful, vague, and we want to be happy and successful, but to me, it's very much sort of a vague goal. And in some ways it's kind of unworkable because I need to know exactly what someone means by being successful. So what does it mean for you to be successful? Paint me the picture. What does that mean? So that I can understand. And my question to you is, what does it mean for you to live an authentic life? If you were to say, I want to live more authentically, then it would be really important for us to ask that. So I'll share what it means to me. And this is what it feels like. Authenticity is like a dial on a dimmer. And it means many things to me. I know I'm feeling authentic when I embrace and accept who I am at the very core. Not easy, ongoing practice. Authenticity means that I'm living true to my values. I align my actions with what I say I want. I know my truth, and I can speak it out into the world when I feel called. It also means that I'm being brave enough to set boundaries that not just respect me, but the people I'm in relationship with, and that I own my choices. And I live my life in a way that I think is very unapologetic. So if you leave this workshop today with one takeaway, it's this. I want you to be specific with yourself and tell yourself exactly what living an authentic life means. So the handout that you have doesn't have that question, but it has a full piece of paper with no lines and all the room in the world to work. So instead of having a fuzzy goal with a fuzzy outcome, we want to narrow that. We want to make it more laser-like. And that's where we want to make a clear goal, right? So let's start with that. So number one is I want you to write down what it means to me to live an authentic life. Sound good? Just looking in the comments. So I have a very big screen. So when you see me looking over here, I haven't gone into another part. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the 5 keys to living your most authentic life. So there are not just 5 steps as naturally. There are probably 50 steps or 500 steps, or maybe there's even 5,000 steps. But I've distilled down what I think are 5 key strategies that move the needle swiftly, okay? So here goes. Number 1. The first thing that we want to do when we think about living an authentic life is we want to abandon the should vision, okay? We all know that. We don't want to be living life based on shoulds. So living authentically means that we do our very best to let go of the vision of what we thought our life should look like and start to feel into the vision of what it needs to feel like. So many times with clients, they'll say, I wish I could do that. You know, I'll ask them something. They'll say, I wish I could do that. And the first thing that I say, and I'm sure there's a few clients on here that are nodding, is I'll say, well, can't you? And whenever you ask somebody if they can do something, they almost always take like a little moment where their head bobs and they pause. And it's that place where I know that they're considering, because what they think they should do has become now an obligation for them instead of really considering the options. We have far fewer obligations and far more choices than we believe that we have about our life. So this process involves this kind of purposeful disconnecting of listening solely to our brain, and then starting to drop down very much someplace below this. Your brain has a much different agenda from your heart and your gut. So if I ask you, where does your deep knowing come from? Like, what part of your body does your deep knowing come from? And usually what I'll do is I'll just say, put your hand on your body. Do you put your hand on your belly? Do you put your hand on your heart? Where do you put your hand? Go in the chat bar and let me know. And if you put your hand there, heart, belly, gut, heart, I know. It's important to know that, because when you're stepping into this place where you are connecting with your feelings, if you're tactile like I am, then you need to put your hand there. Otherwise, what happens is we float into our head. And when I'm coaching clients, I watch where they go with their energy, even though we're on Zoom. Because when their head and their eyes and their energy goes up, I know they're connecting with their head. And your head has a different purpose than your heart and your gut. Your head is hardwired for your security. Your head is hardwired for your security, right? So she's quite invested in you playing small. That's her intention. When you head below, and you go into your heart and you go into your gut, you're now connecting with your soul. And from this place, this place is where you know who you are, you know why you're here, and you know what you're made for. So living authentically oftentimes involves us going, this is the life that I think I should be living, but what if I just allowed it to be something different, right? What if I allowed myself to live more closely to how I want my life to feel? Okay, that's the first thing. So let go of the should and move into the sense of the feeling that you desire. And Danielle Laporte talks about this all the time. She talks in the desire map, and if you've read it, please put it in there, because I think this is really brilliant, and this is work I've done many times. When she talks about creating a goal, she talks about the fact that for most of us, we create a goal with the intention that the achievement of the goal is going to make us feel a certain way. So we create the goal thinking, you know, if I lose 10 pounds, I'm going to feel a certain way. Or if I get that job offer and I do that job, I'm going to feel a certain way. And then what happens? Sometimes we achieve the goal and we feel amazing, right? Because that goal is so perfectly aligned with us and it gives us all the feels that we're looking for. But have you ever had the opposite, where you attain the goal and it doesn't feel the way you need to feel? So her whole suggestion is, and I wholeheartedly stand behind this, is to step into the feeling of it. What's the feeling that you want in your life? Think about the threads that you want to interweave between all aspects of your life. What feelings are those? What 4 feelings, what 5 core feelings are you seeing, whether it's passion or excitement or love or connection, and know the feelings. So that's the kind of work. And if you have not done the desire map, I heavily suggest it. That's number 1, abandon the should and drop into the feelings. Number 1, go below your head. Number 2 is commit to your truth. Now, I'm not going to pretend that we can get into this in the level that we possibly need to in order to really break this down. And many of you have been in my programs where we talk about truth. Now, I ran a program 3 times last year, which was called Reclaim Your Voice. My intention with it was reclaim your voice and learn how to speak your truth into the world with more courage, confidence, and conviction. Now, what I didn't realize, or I don't think I really took in at the beginning, was that I made the assumption that we all knew what our truth was. And what would happen is when we would start moving through the work and we'd be talking about certain things, then I would find, hold on, my screen's going. There we go. Sorry, I don't know if you saw that or if it was just on my side. Hold on. Can you see it? Okay. I have do not disturb on. I do not know what's going on. I blame Steve Jobs for all of this. So what would happen is that what would happen is I would talk about learning how to speak your truth into the world, and other people would be, but I'm not sure what my truth is. And I was so humbled by that information because it made me remember how much we disconnect ourselves from our own truth. So number 1, when we talked about really digging into the feeling, when you go with your feelings over your thinking, you're already going to connect in with your truth. But the thing is to live an authentic life means to be able to access your truth. And so before we get all wrapped up in being able to speak it into the world, it starts with being able to speak it to yourself. So first we need to be able to speak it to ourselves, because funny enough, that's not as easy as it looks. And if you can speak it out to the world, then there's the ability to be able to do it in a way where you feel comfortable and you have the confidence to do it. And what trips us up most of the times is that we start to get caught up in how it's going to land with other people. So we get concerned about what other people are going to think, or what are other people going to say, or am I going to be able to back myself up, or am I going to look foolish? And what will I say if somebody challenges me? So I want to give you a couple practicals because I think this is helpful. And I know that this last 365 days has been really polarizing in many ways. And a lot of times we feel ourselves stifling our truth or speaking our truth and then regretting that we spoke it. So here's something that I think helps. and it's a distinction. And the distinction is between the truth and your truth. The truth is like an absolute. It's like saying the earth is round. It's kind of accepted, so to speak. And then there's your truth. And your truth is specific to you. You get to decide what your truth is because it's your truth. And because of so, you do not need to justify it to anyone because you're the authority of it. And I want you to take that in for a second. The truth and your truth. Your truth is about you. Your truth comes from you, and you're the authority on it. And it's not your responsibility to have other people be okay with your truth. That's something you can take on if you'd like. I don't suggest it. We've all tried it. It doesn't feel that great. But if you can decide that this is me and my truth, and what's your truth is your truth, and you can create that separation between the two, it makes it a lot easier to be able to honor your truth. So not your responsibility. And to live authentically really means that you need to have clarity, like we were talking, on what your truth is. And more than anything, I would say, be committed to telling your truth to yourself at all costs. Your truth that we're blocking, your truth, it's just bubbling up all the time, 24/7. And we block it because we tell ourselves we don't know. Or like I did, and you can look back on my history of all the Ironman and different things that I did, you can busy yourself to the point where you also don't feel your truth. So 2 things. Stop telling yourself you don't know the truth. By simply taking those words out of your vocabulary and creating some space in your day, week, and year so that those things that are already bubbling up, you can hear them. So being able to create some space and asking the question, because when you allow that to come up and you can acknowledge it, you can also play a game with yourself where you can tell yourself that if information comes up and it bubbles up and that truth comes up to the surface, you don't need to do anything about it. To me, it is separate it. It's stop telling yourself that you don't know the truth. Create space for your truths to come up. Whatever's bubbling up, do your very best to not suppress it and just acknowledge it. You don't necessarily have to do anything about it. You certainly don't want to block it or put it down, but that makes sense. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? Perfect. All right. Go back into the chat bar. So here's the thing about it. Committing to your truth, to me, is a lifelong endeavor. But in order to live authentically, you need to know what your truth is. So to me, all of these things play a part in that. Let's talk about 100%. Yes, it's how you feel, Mary, or it's my opinion. Very much so. So being brave with boundaries. So how do you feel about boundaries? How do you feel about the concept of boundaries? Because growing up in my world, I wasn't allowed to have a lot of boundaries, right? I used to look at boundaries as walls. But now I think of boundaries as doors. The best boundaries open the door to the most meaningful relationships. Okay, so Brene Brown talks about boundaries really simply, and she says, boundaries are what's okay and what isn't. And I love the definition of boundaries as boundaries are where I stop and you begin. Okay, so there's all types of boundaries. There's time boundaries, there's physical boundaries, there's sexual boundaries, there's material boundaries, and there's definitely emotional boundaries. And they're flexible. You can have a sliding scale with your boundaries, and it depends on what we're talking about and what areas of our life. So in some areas of your life, you're going to have more rigid boundaries. And in some areas of your life, you're going to have more flexible. And here's the thing, you can change your boundaries according to where the relationship is. So it's something that can change with time. But here's what you need to know, is that boundaries are specific to you. And that's a theme here. If we're talking about living authentically, then we're talking about honoring you. And a boundary is something that you get to decide whether it's working for you or not. And so many of the issues that I talk about with clients and coaching and in programs simply come down to the fact that we might not have the healthiest boundary in one or more relationships with our life. So know that you're responsible for your boundaries. No one else is going to do it for you. Someone else might send a boundary between you. And, one of my best boundary setting friends is on here tonight. Dr. Heather talked to me about boundaries. And here's the thing, you set them, you uphold them, and you both benefit from them. And without it, this is what happens, is we run the risk of chronically overgiving all the time at the expense of ourselves, or feeling like we're enmeshed with somebody else. Okay, that's how you know. And if you have inappropriate boundaries and it's something that's existing for a long period of time, you'll feel many things. You'll often feel overwhelmed. You might feel frustrated, resentment, anger, burnout, or you might be one of those people who finds themselves showing up very passive aggressively, because being passive aggressive is a way to try and gain control back over the relationship. If you feel like one or more relationships in your life need to have a better boundary, I highly recommend that you spend some energy in this. This is something that I cover really distinctly in Roots because it's important. So to do this, I'm just going to give you a small little crash course. This is not inclusive of exactly how you're going to work with boundaries. But Brene Brown's work is massively awesome about this. But this is what you want to do. If you know that there's a relationship in your life that doesn't have the right boundary, one, you want to acknowledge it. And you want to ask yourself, what is the boundary issue? And the reason why I say ask yourself a question is, the minute you ask a question, you open the portal to your own answers. A lot of times we make the assumption that we know the answer, but we never actually stopped and paused and asked the question. So simply ask yourself, whether it's pen to paper, which is my preference, or go ahead and just ask it aloud in your own self. But ask yourself, what is the boundary issue? And once you know that, and you know what boundary issue is being crossed, then you want to start to develop the communication. And if it's a tricky relationship, or it's someplace where and maybe this is you and you have a hard time with boundaries, you want to do the work before you're in the moment, right? That will help. So what you want to do is you want to write down what it is that the issue is. So you want to be clear with yourself, but then this is something that you want to do with someone else. And I'll give you an example of it in a minute. So Brene says, being clear is kind, and being unclear is unkind. So remember we talked about defining things, and I said, what's the definition of uncomfortable? A lot of times people say growth is uncomfortable and change is uncomfortable. And I said, really, is it though? Because what's really uncomfortable is living the life that's not meant for you. Being clear is kind. What's unkind? Being unclear. So when you finally get to the point, really around any direct communication, but when you get to the point where you want to have the conversation around the boundary, you want to be as straightforward as possible, and you don't want to over-explain it. My recommendation is, number one, use the I language, not the you language. We all know this. Haven't we all had an argument with somebody probably very close to us where we went you, and probably didn't land very well? It's the same thing that you want to do in a conversation around boundaries. So let me give you an example. If you were a person who was, and I can only tell you this from my own personal experience, we have 3 people working, 1 doing online schooling and 2 people working from home. And there was a place where everyone was coming in and out of my door at will, unless they could hear me talking to a client. Now, I would shut the door. In my mind, shutting the door felt like a boundary. Apparently, that wasn't a boundary to anybody else. So this is how it can go. I said, instead of saying, you can't bother me when I'm working, it's more like, I need time to focus when I'm working so that I can get my work done. If my door is closed, I'm unavailable. If my door is open, come on in. See what I'm saying there? And I can give you many, many examples. And this work is worth doing, because when you see the examples, you start to learn at how you can communicate it. And boundaries often require consequences. So in this case, because of the relationship of who I was speaking to, I didn't need to give a consequence, but sometimes you do. It depends on what the boundary is, and you kind of know. So when you get to the point where you finally say what it is that you need to say, you may have to follow it up with a consequence. And in this case, it could be something like, if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to take my workplace away from home, and I won't be, I won't be available after school or something like that. Now, in my case, I didn't say that. So the boundary's one thing and the consequence is something else. And here's what you need to know. When we talk about discomfort, this can be uncomfortable, can't it? Let's just straight up say it. Having that clear, direct conversation is uncomfortable. And a lot of times with boundaries, you have to come back. It's like you come back to it, you come back to it, and come back to it. But be clear about this. It is a short-term discomfort, and it leads to very much a long-term ease. And we need to know that, because when we're in the heart of it and we're sweating and we want to say what we want to say and we're uncomfortable and then we mess it up, even though we practiced it, we need to know that coming back to it and coming back to it and coming back to it's helpful. Short-term discomfort, long-term ease. And the ultimate benefit is it builds mutually beneficial relationships, and it helps you establish your identity. And I say that because when you have good boundary setting in your life, you know who you are, you know what you stand for. It helps because you start to learn yourself. And this is where we're talking about developing that relationship with yourself. It helps you be more self-honoring, clearly, because you're creating a boundary. And it's necessary for sure if we want to talk about owning our own life, right? Being authentic means we're owning our life, we're owning our choices, we're creating it, and so on. So being brave with your boundaries very much is an important part. All right, so let's keep going. Know your values, live your values. And I'm going to tell you, I think this is like the most unsexy thing to say is talk about values, but it's important work. And I love the work that Scott Jeffrey does, Jeffrey. If we get through this material and you sort of feel like I've never really done work on values, we talk about values, we work on values actually in Roots, but if you're on your own, you want to work with it, Scott Jeffrey has it. Now, again, I'm going to start with a definition. So a value is a belief that guides or motivates our actions. Okay, so it's a belief that guides or motivates our actions. So it's kind of like what we think is good or what we think is desirable or worthwhile. And it's really important to know your values because it defines who you are. And again, just like boundaries, it tells you what you stand for. And we know this because if you ever gone into a business and you walk in and what do they often have right behind the front reception, right? They'll often have their business mission statement, which I also think you should have a mission statement, but it'll also often talk about their either core beliefs or core values, kind of an interchangeable word. Okay, why do they do it? Because it creates their brand and it speaks to their character. That's why a business does it. And just like your values create your brand and speaks to your character. So have you ever created with clarity exactly what your values are? Not the kind where you kind of go, yeah, my values, and I've done this, so this is why I'm saying this, where you're kind of like rattling it off in your head. And you're like, well, I value this, and I value that, and I value this. If you go and you Google personal core values, which I recommend you do, it's going to come up with hundreds of words. And when you're really working on your values, that's a great thing to do because you can see it. But it matters for you to bring into your values into maybe 10 or so. And ideally, you even start to put them in order of what's most important to you. So it's okay if you've never done this. But here's the thing, when you know what your values are, then you can live, it's easier for you to live a congruent lifestyle. Research shows that those that have values and lead their life that way live more fulfilled lives. And I also think that authentic people often don't compromise their values to fit in, right? They don't often do that. I'm not saying they don't ever do it because we all do it. We all do things we don't mean to do and we live the consequences of it. And hopefully it's one of those things that goes right. It's important for me to live my values. So authentic people don't often compromise their values and they don't do it generally to try and fit in or to be liked or to get ahead. So where do you start with this? So I'm just going to give you a couple key points. Number one is exactly what I said. Don't use Google, go to DuckDuckGo. But what you want to do is you want to find the core values. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to Google that. And then I want you to consider 2 important times or multiple examples of 2 important times in your life. I want you to consider kind of like what you would call a peak moment. So something that was amazing for you that happened, that you can just draw upon like that. Something that you can feel kind of the energy of it kind of float across the cells of your being. And for me, I remember doing Ironman with my husband, crossing the finish line and having my 2 kids there. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the race was great. Freaking glad I did it. More happy I finished it. And it wasn't the race that made me happy. Yes, but it wasn't what was value driven for me. So the question that you ask yourself in these peak kind of moment that we're talking about is, if the way you felt, what were you honoring about yourself? What values were you feeling? Now, I'll tell you what I was feeling. An example of a values list. I will, Lizzie, thank you. The thing I was feeling was love and connection. That's what I was feeling when I had my Ironman experience, which is a long endurance race. And you want to ask yourself that because there'll be certain emotions that you have, things you felt in that peak moment. And sometimes what's easier is when you do the opposite. Go to a low moment in your life and consider something that was happening in a time when you weren't feeling the way that you needed to feel. And you want to ask yourself the same thing. What was being suppressed or what was being compromised? Because oftentimes we can tell what matters most to us when it's something that is in jeopardy, like freedom, for example. I wonder how many people put freedom on their values list when they started to feel like they didn't have freedom, right? So that's how you want to do is you want to begin to kind of construct your list and refine it as needed. And the words are important. The words have vibrational energy. So you want to kind of connect in with the word. If the word doesn't feel like the right word, it's not meant to be there. So Lizzie, I'll give you a couple examples of a values list. So my number one is health. That's my number 1 value. Number 2 is love. Number 3 is freedom. And number 4 is connection. And number 5 is passion. I actually know my top 10 values. And here's the thing about your values. Your values can change. 2020 probably changed some people's values, but it's important to know your values so that you can live your values. So if these are your values and you're making choices in your life, the way that you come back to it is you're able to understand if you are living that or not, right? And it helps you create a purpose-driven life when you're clear on what your values are. Okay? Maybe not the best one, but probably my favorite one. Let's talk about self-compassion. Now, when I said that living an authentic life could possibly have 50 steps or 500 steps or so on, you might wonder why I would put self-compassion in my top 5. Let me start by defining it. I know this is not shocking to you. Self-compassion is essential, 100% essential. And it is, defined, it is the ability to give yourself unconditional kindness and comfort while embracing the human condition. Okay, so it's your ability to give yourself unconditional kindness and comfort. And my colleague, Dr. Heather, because we did a bit of a series on self-compassion and a few other things, I loved what she said. It's that ability to say, I'm human and I can be kind to myself despite the circumstances. So for me, this is one thing. And this is the question that I ask, because I will tell you, the practice of self-compassion is great for well-being, but it's a bigger performance hack. To me, they're both things. I never used to be a soft place to land for myself. I grew up with the idea that shame was a fantastic motivator. And it was something that I used for myself all the time. And the truth is, it's a terrible motivator. There is so little room for growth with shame. Compassion is rooted in mindfulness. That's the first thing to realize. And it allows you the space to be and to be better. And that's what I think is important. So if you know that you are exceptionally hard on yourself, and many of us are, and we can have compassion for that. Notice I put my hand on my heart because that's where that goes. You can change this. So your vision is to speak to yourself the way that you would a beloved friend. So when you're thinking about how do I have compassion for myself in this big, bold world that I want to live in? How do I create what I want for myself? How do I be grateful for what I have? How do I strive and thrive and still feel like a whole person? Practice the art of self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff, has incredible resources around this. She's quite kind of like, well, she has a doctorate in it, and she has incredible resources also on. And it's also a big part of the ROOTS program because I think it's so essential. If you want to upgrade your sense of self-compassion, this is where, if you're tactile, you want to place your hand on your heart or your hand on your belly. You want to place your hand on your arm. You want to hold your own hand. And as silly as that sounds, when you feel yourself being hard on yourself, give yourself the compassion that you would give somebody else. And one of the questions that you can ask yourself is simply this: if I was being compassionate to myself in this moment, what would I say to myself? If I was being compassionate to myself in this moment, whatever that moment is that you're talking about, that you're needing self-compassion, what would I say to myself? Why do I ask the question? Because when you ask a question, you open the portal to your own answer. And this is where I talk about the bubbling up of the truth is, we know what we need. We know who we are. There are just so many things that have stood in the way or blocked the information, or in one way or another stepped in the way of that. So this idea of authenticity that we've been talking about, the practice of authenticity, is being able to manage ourselves in the process. And that's where self-compassion comes in. Make sense? Thank you, Heather. Oh, Amanda, there's another person who's going to put, an example of a values list. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the takeaways. Here's where I would go with this. If you could take away one thing from this whole workshop, shall we say, it is the idea and the understanding, and maybe even just the consideration, that the place to spend your energy is in the relationship with yourself. So when we talked about the crosshatch and we talked about in the center being authentic and all the different X's in your life, this is what you want to work on. This is my opinion. This is the place to spend our time, to spend our energy, because when you get the relationship to yourself right, so many other parts of your life start to take care of itself. Let's do a brief recap. Number one, let go of what you think and step into what you feel is right for you, and very much this one audacious life. Number two, commit to speaking your truth to yourself and let that be your focus, and master that skill, and it will become easier for you to practice speaking it into the world when you feel called. So first speak to yourself, then you can work on speaking it to the rest of the world. Try not to flip that around. Next one is to honor boundaries. Boundaries create freedom for the relationships that matter most and for the person that you're meant to be. Why? Because we talked about how it creates self-honoring. It creates a sense of self-identity. You know who the hell you are, which is incredibly important. Okay, short-term discomfort leads to long-term ease. Also, you want to know your values. They are part of your playbook, right? It teaches you who you are, and you need them to know, you really need to know them with crystal clarity so that you can live them. Don't assume, write them down and work on them, and that will help you with that. And lastly, number 5 is we want to go to this place of practicing self-compassion. It is one of the most powerful wellness strategies, but it's also a performance strategy. And I truly believe that it's most important for us to all feel like we have a soft place to land. Be that for yourself, just like we're that for other people. So let's close the loop. When we listen, it plants a seed. And when we write something, which is why I gave you a PDF, it deepens it. But when we act upon it, it solidifies. So what I would love for you to do and commit to yourself, and this is for you if you want to be doing it, is you want to take the time to come back to this information. So if you didn't get a chance to download the questions in the PDF, go ahead and do that. But at the very least, you want to choose 1 or 2 actions or intentions that fit you right now in this season of your life, right? So I want you to don't do the one you think you need to do the one that you really feel called to do. And that's how you'll go ahead and close the loop. Couple things to keep in mind. Number 1 is, please remember that this is a practice. And whenever something is a practice, there's absolutely no room for perfection. These were big topics, knowing and living your values, being authentic in as many ways as you can, the most that you can, creating boundaries, especially in difficult, relationships. They're worth it, but they're not easy. And my belief is that you'll get off track. And so instead of being surprised when you do it, be expecting it. And when you feel yourself come off track, that's when you practice your self-compassion and you choose to just kind of bring yourself right back into it. Because there will always be times when you don't live your values, or you overgive, or you chronically overgive at the expense of yourself. And that's okay. And that's what being human is. So we learn these beautiful lessons along the way, and remembering it's a practice is probably one of the best things that you can do. And lastly, around this is we want to be really clear about the powerful kind of positive stacking effect of what small, consistent steps do. Small, consistent steps, one over top of the other, over top of the other, over top of the other, creates big change. So it's wonderful when you do something like I did, where all the balls fall down. Well, it's not wonderful, but it works. All the balls fall to the ground, and then you go ahead and you need to redesign what you're doing in life. Great. Those are powerful. But what's also powerful are all the small things that you can do. And one of the things that you can do around this is to have this level of consciousness. And that's what we're talking about here. So small hinges swing very big doors, and it's important that you celebrate your wins along the way. Mentorship. Mentorship comes in many forms, doesn't it? There is the mentorship that we give ourselves, which I think is so incredibly important. And then there's the mentorship that we give each other. And I feel incredibly strong in mentorship between women. And I would say that over the years, my relationship with other women has been one of the things that I have put the most energy into. And it's really the reason why it prompted me to launch Roots, which is opening tonight, and the ROOTS Sisterhood. Over the years, I have been searching for that. I have wanted that kind of intentional collaboration with other women. And let me tell you what 2020 meant to me. 2020, like I can forget it. It was this internal call to action. So if you read my post on Instagram, I might have talked about this a bit, because I felt like I was having a human kind of wackadoodle game or some sort of weeble wobble. And if you don't know what a weeble wobble is, you can go ahead and Google that after. But it's essentially a wooden toy, and it's round on the bottom, and it's shaped as a person. And what was happening is, for me, is I was going along in my life in 2020, and this would be a great place to make me feel like I wasn't alone on this. And go in the chat bar. And what would happen is something would happen, and I would feel like I got whacked upside the head, and my life would kind of go this way and that way, and I'd weeble and wobble back and forth, and I would kind of find a root myself. And then, time would go on a little bit, hopefully not, minutes and hours, but days or weeks. And then I would sort of feel like I kind of got banged again, and my life would kind of go back this way and this way and this way and this way. And I noticed very early on that in periods where I didn't feel really rooted in who I was, for whatever reason, maybe I took my foot off the kind of self-love, self-care bandwagon, or, I started to check out more than I was checking in, which, of course, 2020 was a lot about that for me anyways. And I would feel this kind of proverbial off kilter. And in order to kind of feel the way I needed to feel, I had to get really intentional about it. I absolutely doubled down. I dug into my premises. I examined my perspectives. I looked at my values. I looked at my boundaries. I really, for sure, doubled down into the idea of what my self-compassion is. I gifted myself what I needed. I went deeper and deeper and deeper. And the more that I focused on this, the more I felt like myself. And whenever something like that happens for me, it becomes the conversation that I want to have with other people. And so I started working with clients around this. We started looking at all this. What were the things that rooted you deeply into who you are? And the more we had the conversation and the more we became aware of it and the more we consciously put this into action, the more we all felt settled, the more we felt like who we are. And more importantly, it was this idea that not only was I really kind of surviving and doing okay, but I felt like I was starting to kind of thrive and move forward. This became the very kind of place where I started to work out Roots. Now, to be clear, Roots is a program that I have been birthing and gifting to myself for decades, probably the last decade and a half. And I finally had, I'm just going to say the impetus, I felt the call to action to finally put it into place. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes really introducing you to what Roots is. This is something that we haven't opened the sales page till right now. So I know a lot of you have been messaging me and asking me and wondering about it. So I'm going to do my best to spend a couple minutes telling you what Roots is. Roots is two things. Number one is Roots is a program and Roots is a sisterhood. So telling you about the program. So there's a few features of it. Number one, when we're in the program, and I'll tell you what the modules are in a moment, is it's 10 weeks of modules. Program begins in the second week of February. We do 10 live weekly modules every week. There are weekly live classes, and there's also replays that are available to you, of course, because not everybody can be live. And there's also accompanying materials. And also there is going to be all sorts of support bonus videos and virtual experience in it. So the program is 10 modules, and in the Roots part of the program, we'll be moving through the modules together. My intention with this is it's gracious. I feel really strongly about that. And what I mean about gracious is it is a deep dive, but you determine how deeply you're diving. Some of the things we talked about tonight, we very much go into in Roots. So I'll introduce it. We'll have a whole week on the module. I'll give you some exercises. You decide what you want to do with it. I don't live in your life. So for you, you may want to do the biggest deep dive of all things. And for other people, you want to learn what you learn and not feel like it's something else that's burdening you. And I feel very strongly that there's room for that in this program. There's also, the other side of it is that there is also, it's held on a private platform, which was a really important part for me. In the past, I have done Zoom calls and then we've gone on Facebook. This is completely off of Facebook. You're on a private platform. So you have your own personal password to a dashboard where the program is. All the materials, all the replays, all the accompanying materials, and all the bonus materials. And we'll drop some fun stuff in there along the way, okay? And there'll be a private forum. So the private forum is on the daily. And you can be as much a part of it or as a little a part of it. You can comment, you can ask questions. I'll be on there every single day, and so will every single other woman that's on there. So this is the community within the program. And after the 10 weeks, we transition into the Roots Sisterhood, which I'll tell you about in just a moment. So I know you're going to ask me about modules, and this is as much information as I'm going to give you. So the 10 modules are based on strengthening your relationship to yourself. Okay, so it's everything that we've been talking about in that respect. This builds the roots of your own rise. So when I talked about that weeble wobble, the more that I got my roots firmly planted beneath me was the more I felt like not only I could maintain who I was despite what was going on around me, but I felt like I then had the capacity to rise and change and move forward and live more of my purpose. That's it. So this builds the roots of your rise. Things like, building a strong intuition, badass boundary setting, cultivating work-life relationships that feel purposeful. And for God's sakes, can we find some levity in the world? So a place where we can maybe be a little bit lighter, we can laugh at ourselves, because really there is so much to laugh at ourselves and accept who we are and just really feel fantastic. So striving towards what you want in a way that feels aligned for you. Modules 1 through 3, which you can see up there, this is the part where we kind of build the foundational premise of what it means to have really a soul-inspired life. And it gets you in that place of seeing and accepting and owning your feminine superpowers. So those things that are natural to you, I'm going to make you become really conscious of it. So you really, really understand what you have at your ability. And if you're already on that route, you can just deepen into it more. Modules 4 through 7, this is where we talk about truth, boundaries, values, passion, and purpose. Okay? Going into the last modules, it's really fun having two computers going at the same time. If you're ever going to run a program, you should do it this way. Supernatural. Okay, modules 8 through 10. This is where we're going to work on alignment. And we're going to talk about culling and honing. And culling and honing, which was on the other page, is that ability to question and do the maintenance. It's like you're creating, but where in our life are we going to go back and we make sure that, one, we're following our values, two, that we're congruent. There's the alignment in what we talked about. And here's the big part of it, letting go of that which is no longer. In order for you to take your next breath, you have to let go of your last one. And so I've noticed in coaching that as we're moving forward and we're moving towards the life and the place that we want to be, the thing that holds us back is what we're holding on to. So that's where module 9 comes in, cut the cords, put down the rocks, get rid of it. That's the important part. And then when we get to this point where we're done, number 10, then we're going to transition into the ROOTS Sisterhood. So like the goddesses we are, and I was just so excited to use this picture because I had a photo shoot and she made me do this. And I thought, when am I ever going to use a picture where I'm doing this? And so this is it. So I wanted you to know what the ROOTS Sisterhood is. To me, it will develop as it goes, won't it? Like I can have the idea about what it's going to be. I know all the incredible women that I want to bring into it to provide interviews. And I know the kinds of conversations I want to have and so on, but it isn't just about me. So it's something that will evolve as we go. And as each group of Roots women go to the program, because this will be ongoing, then we're going to go ahead and put everyone into the sisterhood. And this is a place where we're going to, to me, we're going to really explore and deepen the lifestyle and the conversation. So because it's a practice, because a lot of things that we talked about, when we get to the end of 10 weeks, well, on some level, we'll all be on the same page. We'll be talking the same language. We'll at least have had the understanding. And it's almost like as you go into the sisterhood, this is really when you start to see the changes. As a founding member, which is what this launch is, you receive lifetime access to this group. You will never have to pay additional money. And I mean it. You will never pay additional money, which is a massive benefit for being in the founding group. Because future groups will in all likelihood have to continue to pay. So you could be in the sisterhood for 5 years and you don't need to pay any money. So what do we do in the sisterhood? So again, just to be really clear, this is where we'll do ongoing workshops. What are they on? I don't know. We haven't done it yet, but I have ideas. Interviews. I know a lot of cool people. Maybe you do too. Maybe you're one of them. Let's talk about certain things. Let's have collaborative discussions. I feel like this is a place where we could have some live experiences. When retreats open up, I know that I will be inviting the sisterhood into that. Maybe we're doing guided meditations. Maybe we're doing embodiment yoga classes. Really, the sky's the limit. This is the place where I will be putting my energy and my efforts going forward. If you know me or have worked with me for any amount of time, I love to provide value to the best of my ability. I'm going to be pulling some of that back from the general public, and I'm going to be shuttling it into the sisterhood. So that's where that's going. So what does this look like? Or who is this for? Really quickly, I just want to tell you, if you feel called to it, it's for you. That's intuition. But I also believe that if you want to be in an ongoing community, and if you're like me, that's where I want to put my energy these days. If you want to be with like-minded women who are having the kind of conversations that you want to be having, this is for you. And I say that because so many times when I travel with my girlfriends or we do something, invariably the conversation always comes up where someone's like, oh my God, you have such amazing friends. And the conversation I hear from clients so often, and especially in retreats, is they leave the retreat and they feel so connected to the women that are there. And they wonder why they don't necessarily have that in the rest of their life. How you get it, you lead with what you want. I really believe when you go through this program, and we're going to be sexy, strong, sassy, vulnerable, we'll be all those things. You will have a relationship with these women that maybe you only hope for. So I think that's a big part of it. I know that's a big part of it. So there'll be an ongoing community. Number two, if you are ready to embrace that strong feminine self we talked about and be a woman, so enjoy your vulnerable self, all the things that make you so damn smart and intuitive, and really work on what we're talking about with this level of authenticity. And when you're when you're authentic, you are accepting who you are and you're owning who you are. Next thing is, I believe that this will be for you if you want to embrace both your light and your dark. I have listened to so many societal norms that tell us to shine the light on the shiniest part of us over and over and over. And yet I know some of our greatest brilliance are in the places that feel the darkest. So if you want to embrace your light and your dark, Roots in the program, we're going to be amazing for you in the sisterhood. You want to feel grounded, resilient, and completely unfuck-withable. Now, it's important that you put the with in there. When you are truly at peace, and this is literally a definition, so don't send me any don't swear sort of email. When you are truly at peace and you're in touch with yourself and nothing anyone says or does bothers you and no negativity or drama can touch you, you are unfuck-withable. To me, I feel like if this is something that resonates with you, you are most definitely in the right place. And you want to know and accept who you are, what you stand for, why it matters. And lastly, I feel like this is a place for you to be if you are ready for more levity and genuine optimism and growth. So you feel like you are ready to rise despite your external circumstances. This is how I feel. I can't control what goes on outside of me, but I can definitely control what goes on within me. And this is where I want to put my efforts, and that's what Roots will be about. So let me talk to you a little bit about what did the pricing look like. So there's 4 options. Pricing for this program is 997 Canadian dollars, and all the prices that are on here are inclusive of tax, no matter where you live. So it's $997, but for the founding group, which is what this is, it's $697, okay? $697. You can do it as a one-time upfront payment. And again, this gives you that unlimited access to the sisterhood, or you can do it in 4 monthly payments of $175. $175 Canadian, all taxes in. And I also have 10 VIP packages available. What does that mean? VIP just means that you are also tacking on 4 additional one-on-one 60-minute coaching sessions with me. So if you are currently a client for mine, you can tack these on already. So this is quite a substantial savings. So if you want to add this in, that's fine. I'll just add it to what you already have. So I'm only offering 10 of these. So the important consideration for you is, do you want to be paying it up front? Do you want to be doing 4 monthly payments, or do you want to be adding it on and also doing the VIP package? The first 10 women who join also receive a 45-minute private one-on-one coaching. And I'm doing this, I think this will be the only time that I really do this, but I think it's important. And you can use this to get yourself started. So I guess one of the questions someone could have is, what is one coaching session going to do for me? Well, it's interesting because I don't often do one-offs, right? Most of my clients work in packages with me, but I am amazed at how far you can get in a short period of time. So these sessions are definitely great if you're someone who wants to maybe create some additional clarity, or maybe you know that you've had some real difficulties with aspects of this, or you have some really strong limiting beliefs, or you have something that you feel is going to be potentially a barrier for you. You're going to be one of the women who wants to sign up first so that you can get one of those 10 coveted spots. And if you know that you're the woman, and why do we do this? We do this every time. We hover, like, like the hover over the yes, I'm in. If you're a hover and you know that you're joining, give yourself the benefit of also being able to say yes to this. Okay. All right. So here's my belief. We sign up for things, whatever it is, because of the things that we think that we want, right? This happens all the time in my retreats. There is something that tends to link us to something that we want. It's what draws you in. It's the reason that you sign up for something. And there'll be something that quite often that you'll be wanting by saying yes. And you can let that be your impetus. But the minute that you sign up, my recommendation is let it go. Because you will leave and you will receive the thing that you need from the program. It's this practice of knowing, right? So if we feel inclined, to me, that's the thing that you want to say yes to. So Amanda's going to place this. We talked about this. Yeah, Amanda's going to place this in the chat bar. And this is a free resource that I want to share with you. It's a 15-minute video, so it's a real quick check-in. And it's 5 must-have habits to check in when you want to check out, because we all want to check out once in a while. But these habits will help you kind of prevent you from chronically checking out. So this is a great thing to do because it's nice and short. You want to collect this resource. This is something that you can do on a Sunday morning because it shouldn't take you more than a half an hour to read the video, to watch the video rather, download it and just fill out some of the questions and so on. And it's a really, really great short takeaway. And I think you'll find it super, super helpful. So Amanda, did you put that in the chat bar? I don't have it up. Yep, perfect. Okay. Last thing, registration. So registration closes on Sunday, January 31st. And more than anything, I know that I've gone over time. How did that happen? But I want to thank you so much for, number one, being here, for saying yes to coming on and giving me a Monday night, the coveted Monday night slot when you could have been watching Netflix. So I so appreciate that you came here live. And even if you're receiving this and watching this as a replay, I really sincerely appreciate it. I hope that on some level you receive some tidbits, some value, some information that you can start to integrate right now. And I definitely hope that you consider joining Roots and being part of the founding program and receive all of the incredible benefit that you're going to get from being in that first group and help me build the experience. So as we go into the sisterhood, you'll be the first group. And as the next group comes through, they'll come into, and this group of incredible women who know who the hell they are and why they're here is going to grow and grow and grow. And I hope that you'll be part of it. I'm going to go ahead and just finish sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, both about Roots, but also about what we were talking about here today, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, Lizzie, you're right in the middle of my screen. What a lovely view. So right now you are, let me pull up the chat bar. There we go. Okay, so number one is I can see you all now. So thank you so much for sticking with me on my technical issues and my 2 computer issues. Questions, anything that you want to know or any comments that you want to make? You're so welcome, Kelly. You're welcome. Can you do me a favor? Can you go in the chat bar and tell me something that resonated with you? Something that you heard, something that you felt, a shift or a change that you want to make.
Laura, can I ask a quick question?
Dr. Heather, by all means.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My husband is blaring the music. I'm trying to get out of it, so I'm sorry if that's a distraction. But your truth. I'm just wondering, like, if someone, that's always my favorite part of what you talk about because I think it's something I struggle with. So, can you share, like, if someone said to you, "What's your truth, Laura?" What would you say? Like, is it constantly changing? Is it something you can actually articulate? Is it a feeling?
You mean like a truth around, like, in general? Because to me, I think about my truth in relationship to a certain topic, right?
Okay. I think it's like when you were talking tonight about, like, just let your truth percolate up, that kind of thing. It's like, what is that? I think I'm struggling with that. Can you articulate? And if not, that's okay too. I can kind of be thinking about it.
Well, let's see if I can articulate it. Yeah, to me, your truth is your essential knowings, the things that you know inside of you, like your innate understanding or the connection that you have to what sits true to you. And when I say that, it's the fact that it's always bubbling up. Like the truth of our lives is always coming up. And my goodness, we go to incredible lengths to try and suppress that. We busy ourselves, we numb ourselves, we distract ourselves, we tell ourselves we don't know. And when I say, connecting with your truth, it's the information that you need to know based on you living your life. So oftentimes when I'm coaching with a client and, she says something, I'll often say, is that true? And we do that kind of head bob thing, because when someone asks you something, it stops you in your track. And when you ask the question, it opens the portal to your answer. And oftentimes we reveal to ourselves that we aren't telling ourselves the truth, right? When I say, is that the truth? There's that moment. And again, I go back to that place where connect with that truth within yourself, which is not generally up here, but farther down. And the minute that you do that and you create some space, you can almost always connect in with the truth of it. Right? Does that help?
Yeah, it totally does. Thank you so much. And I really loved your analogy tonight about like your head she's there to protect you, and down below is your soul, who's a dreamer and who's, expansive. And that's what I thought that was a real gift tonight. Thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome, Heather. Your soul knows who you are. She knows why you're here, and she will never lead you astray, because she doesn't get off track by fear of things that were never going to happen and were never for you. That's my understanding. I can feel where I want. Let me just read a couple things. Does someone else have another question? By all means. Oh, I love reading this. By all means, please go ahead and just unmute yourself and start speaking. Karen, I can feel where I want to be. I have words tonight, and it's inspired me to find the words. I love that, Karen. Sorry, sometimes I go to read it and then it goes down. We busy ourselves in order to suppress the truth. That's so true, Jen. Kelly, still discovering my truth. Aren't we all? I'm getting glimpses, and I feel I still struggle knowing with what it is completely. I think it's ever evolving, Kelly. And these sound so silly, but this is kind of the journey of it. I feel like we are like onions. It's like we take one layer and then we go deeper and then we go deeper. And all of this starts to inform us more and more deeply of who we are. And the more you listen, I think the more information you get. And the more conscious you are of this, the easier it is for you. So sometimes it's just a matter of putting a few empowering strategies in place, and all of a sudden now you feel like you can get that information as you go. All right, let me see here. Thank you so much. Good information. You are so welcome. I hope you said is it Karine? I hope I said your name right. Have to go, Kim. That's okay. Thank you for giving me an hour and a half of your time. Did you know you've been on here for an hour and a half? Did I miss any questions, Amanda? No, nothing that comes to mind. You're welcome, Karen. All right. You're welcome, Heather. All right, any other questions? You're welcome, Kathy. Appreciate that. And here's the thing that's wonderful about mentorship. So to me, I know that I sat here and I did this at you, and thank you for kind of following through. I felt a bit nervous today doing it. So I could tell I was, well, you could probably feel it. I could feel it too. So thank you for that, for just witnessing that and letting me be that way. And I think what's wonderful about mentorship between women is, yes, tonight I spoke at us. It was the nature of the way the class was set up. But the thing that we need to learn doesn't always come from the person who's hosting the presentation or the program. It's the conversation with the woman across the proverbial table, or the one that you have in the chat bar, or sometimes it's witnessing somebody else moving through information or learning things, and we get to see that, and we see it in ourselves. And that's what's powerful. That's what always happens when I run a program or I host a retreat, is we get to witness that in other people. And that's different than one-on-one work. One-on-one work is powerful. It's amazing. Group work, it lights me up. Group work is amazing. And I think that's where we get the collective. And so what's greater than having a whole bunch of women coming together and doing that? All right, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. I just want to say thank you so much. Hey, Dawn, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And you can go ahead and message me. I'm going to be showing up on social and a few different things. You'll probably get a few emails this week. I'll be pestering you to come join us for all the fun. And I will be on Instagram Live on Friday because Amanda's making me an Instagram television. And you can always reach out to me and ask questions or clarify anything. All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Amanda.